AM radio, an op-ed column, and Fox News is not enough. I want a center-right nation to fight for its soul, and its soul is represented in the arts. Its soul is represented in a world in which media is everything. AM radio is the lowest form of communication. It's tinny, it's not robust, it's not Avatar. I want Avatar. I want the right to enter the world of media to the extent and invest in media the way that the left does.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast, a Breitbart.com podcast. The podcast starts now. Here's Curt with today's headlines.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Curt Schilling Podcast. Great show lined up today. Representative Warren Davidson, member of the Freedom Caucus, joins me today. And then one of my favorite people in the world, John Nolte, as well. He's got a lot of really good stuff up. But first, we're going to start with the left's continued. I'm out of adjectives for what they are. Some of the conclusions that they're drawing, well, it's funny. I mean, it really is honestly funny. I want you to listen to CNN's Jake Tapper talking about what he has deduced from what the president has been saying over the last couple of days.
What the hell is going on? Seriously, what the hell is going on? I mean, sincerity, a sincere offer from Putin, and an incredible offer to. I'm looking at you to see you answer the question, not because you're defending it, but just what?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, that's kind of my reaction too. Obviously, what they're trying to do is send the message that they're serious about the 12 people who have been indicted, the 12 Russian government officials, that they want to do something about that, right? But in the process of trying to communicate that, somehow they've given validity to a proposal by Vladimir Putin that I don't know anyone who thinks that would be anywhere remotely acceptable to even have the conversation about. We don't send diplomats over to be interrogated for crimes.
They aren't even crimes. I mean, what's crimes?
Exactly,
right.
just made up.
Invented it. Michael McFaul didn't commit any crimes.
Right.
This is one of the issues that Republicans and national security experts have with Donald Trump, and it used to be something that people said about the left, which is this moral equivalence. Mm-hmm. He thinks that the United States and Russia are on the same moral plane.
Well, and I don't know if that's the belief or not. I know that's, I'm more of a conspiracy theorist than you think. So I'm going to go back to my word from the last segment, compromat. But I would also say that narcissism is blinding. Let's say that he's not compromised. I'm going to give you that. Perhaps. If he's not, then that means that he's so narcissistic that he can't even potentially accept the fact that, as has been proven at this point, Russia interfered with the U.S. election because they favored him. James Clapper talked about this, the fact that he just can't accept this idea. That is now causing great harm to our national security. It's causing great harm to, I believe, confidence in him, even from his party. I think that there are folks who have actually said they don't approve of the way the summit was handled. And what was said in the meeting? You're talking about what the hell happened
We have
behind
no
those
idea.
closed doors.
First thing I want to ask you after you hear that soundbite, that was on CNN. What part of what you just heard had anything to do with news? There was not an ounce of news in that piece. And not only that, but there was a lot of commentary around things that haven't been said or done. It was just a bunch of people interpreting their hatred for Trump and making I'm not even sure what the objective there was, other than to but that's not news. None of that's news. That's one of the reasons why CNN's ratings are tanking and continuing to tank. This next soundbite. So President Trump had some less than kind things to say about the Fed, which is fine. That's the president. Someone who understands how the Fed works like he does. I don't have a problem with that. He just said he just was unhappy with some of the things. He's not thrilled, blah, blah, blah. He's the first president since guess who to comment publicly about the Fed. And I love the fact that this name keeps coming up. He's the first president since Reagan to say something publicly about the Fed that wasn't butt-kissing. But I want you to listen to him talk about it, because I think it's not doing what it should be doing based on what they've done. if that makes sense. Listen up.
I put a very good man in the Fed. I don't necessarily agree with it because he's raising interest rates. I'm not saying that I agree with it, and I don't necessarily agree with it. I must tell you, I don't. I'm not thrilled because, we go up, and every time you go up, they want to raise rates again. And I don't really, I am not happy about it. But at the same time, I'm letting them do what they feel is best. But I don't like all of this work that goes into doing what we're doing. You look at the euro, you look at what's going on with the EU, and they're not doing what we're doing, and we already have somewhat of a disadvantage, although I'm turning that into an advantage. Last year and for years, we've been losing $150 billion with the EU nations, with the European Union. And they're making money easy, and their currency is falling. And China, their currency is dropping like a rock, and our currency is going up. And I have to tell you, it puts us at a disadvantage. Now, I'm just saying the same thing that I would have said as a private citizen. So somebody would say, oh, maybe you shouldn't say that as a president. I couldn't care less what they say, because my views haven't changed. I don't like all of this work that we're putting into the economy, and then I see rates going up. I see China where look at what's happening with their currency. It's dropping like a rock.
I think he has a point in the sense that I think he probably said it and didn't really accept it the way he put it. But yeah, he said the same thing. He said, I said the same thing I'd say as a private citizen, and people that think that you shouldn't say that as a president, I don't care. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but the fact of the matter is he's doing nothing but commenting. He said it. I have the people at the Fed to do what they do, and I'll let them do what they do. I just disagree with it. What's wrong with that? Why is that creating such a furor? Because everything that he says is the next world-ending event. And this next soundbite, I know a lot of people here that listen and watch and are military members, are members of that, or that have family members that are military members, and this is not a small thing. Given my passion for military history and the amount of studying I've done, I've always known this since NATO was formed. There's a clause basically that says the members of NATO are beholden to each other. If you attack one, you attack all. Right? The left is going nuts about the fact that President Trump is making overtures that maybe you don't defend all, and the example was the Montenegro. It's smaller than Connecticut, has an incredibly small population, but is part of NATO. And this is a real conversation to be had, because can you not see a China or a Middle East putting the clutches on a country like Montenegro to bring the allies into a war? They know that would probably fracture us as a nation. But listen to Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and listen to him talk about this, and listen closely to the wording.
Membership in NATO obligates the members to defend any other member that's attacked. So let's say Montenegro, which joined last year, is attacked. Right. Why should my son go to Montenegro to defend it from attack? Why is that?
I understand what you're saying. I've asked the same question. Montenegro is a tiny country with very strong people.
Yeah, I'm not against
right.
Or Albania.
No, by the way, they're very strong people. They're very aggressive people. They may get aggressive, and congratulations, you're in World War III. Now, I understand that, but that's the way it was set up.
So that's not a definitive answer, obviously, but the president clearly had been thinking about it, and good for him. Presidents are supposed to wonder about things like that. Serious countries ought to have debates like that. The U.S. has to defend Montenegro? Really? Why is that? Is there a good reason? Let's hear it. That's the conversation we should be having. But the guardians of our public conversation are not serious people. They are hacks and buffoons. For wondering about our defense guarantee with Montenegro, Trump is being denounced for treason. For asking the question, we're accused of taking orders from Vladimir Putin. What do the Russians have on Tucker Carlson? Asked longtime CNN star Kathy Griffin. Her former network did an entire segment this afternoon suggesting that Americans somehow have some sort of moral obligation to lay down their lives for Montenegro.
I mean, think about that. And that is all real. It's a deadly serious conversation to be had. This next soundbite is, it's delicious. That's the only way I guess I can put it. Probably the largest collection of imbeciles and ignorance and liberal idiocy shows up on the show called The View on ABC Daily. I can't think of more uninformed, less entertaining, anti-American. They're just smart enough to be dangerous, which is to say they've graduated from grammar school. The women on The View they're a joke. Joy Behar, all of them. Judge Jeanine, who you heard on the show the other day, she was asked to go on the show. And apparently they told her at the very last minute that there was a woman, one of the women, female hosts, Joy Behar, was not in that day. And the woman that took her place was a hardcore anti-Trumper. But listen to the exchange with Whoopi Goldberg, just listen to how it ends.
Did you just point at me?
Yes.
Listen, I don't have Trump derangement. Let me tell you what I have.
Okay.
I have I'm tired of people starting a conversation with Mexicans or liars and rapists. I'm tired of people starting a conversation about this country. Listen, I'm 62 years old. There have been a lot of people in office that I didn't agree with, but I have never, ever seen anything like this. I've never seen anybody whip up such hate. I've never seen anybody be so dismissive. And clearly you don't watch the show, so you don't know that I don't suffer from that. What I suffer from is the inability to figure out how to fix this. That's my issue. But one of the things that you talk about a lot, and I'm curious about it, is the deep state. How long has the deep state been there, and who's running it?
Well, I want to answer your question because you had your opening statement, which was how horrible it is that Donald Trump is talking about all of these people.
I'm sorry, baby, that's what you said. You said,
Whoopi, you know what's horrible? When people who shouldn't be here end up murdering the children of American citizens.
You know what's horrible?
What's horrible
when the president of the United States whips up people to beat the hell out of people.
No.
Say goodbye.
So that ended with Whoopi walking out the set. And apparently they met backstage, and Whoopi dropped a couple FUs on Judge Jeanine, and that's where it ended. And you heard her say Trump and hate and dismissiveness. This is what they're experts at. The people being hateful and dismissive are liberals. And they're tired of Trump being hateful and dismissive. You understand? This is the classic Antifa being made up of fascist argument. Like, Whoopi's talking about how pissed off she is that somebody's whipping up violence. That would be the left, by the way. Remember Maxine Waters. All of the violence at the Trump events were being done by people on Whoopi's side of the fence. And Joy Behar's side of the fence. She is pissed off about the hatefulness and I'm tired of opening every conversation with Mexicans are rapists and liberals and criminals. No one ever said that. No one ever said that. No one ever implied that Mexicans are all rapists and criminals. They're the ones inciting the hate, and they're the dismissive ones, and they're the ones inciting violence. And yet she put that on the judge. That's what they do. They hate and despise the very things that they are. In this final soundbite, guys, listen to why there is a generation of people who, like Mrs. Ocasio-Cortez, who have college degrees and are still really stupid people. Tucker Carlson had Ian Samuel on. This gentleman that you're going to hear is a Harvard Law School lecturer, and he doesn't believe in borders and citizenship. Listen up.
There's no such thing as permanent residency for an illegal alien. He has no residency. An illegal alien.
Well, that's just historically, that's not right.
No, well, I'm not talking about historically. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I'm talking about 2018, let's say mid-July 2018. How about today? And illegal aliens are now allowed to vote in San Francisco. There's no permanent residency by definition. They're not residents. They're here legally, and they're allowed to vote. Why is that okay, but Putin influencing election not okay? Why is that not treason and hacking our democracy?
Well, I don't know how else, I don't know how better to put this. Like, look, as I said, I am an originalist. I believe that the central government should not be involved in telling states who can and cannot vote. The Constitution doesn't assign that responsibility to the central government.
Would you be okay with California saying anybody from Russia, any Russian intelligence agent who wants to influence our election, go ahead?
Well, I think I would not, but I would not on the merits, right? Of course I wouldn't on the merits, because I would draw the line differently. I would draw the line at residents, people who live in a place and intend to remain. A very common concept in our law.
But let's just be, as a matter of fact, since this is a news show, be clear on what California is requiring. There's no measure or test for residency. They're not saying you have to intend to stay in San Francisco before voting or prove residency in San Francisco or even be here legally. So what you're saying is irrelevant to the actual facts of this.
I mean, you heard him say it. His criteria for being able to vote is residency. Is it common law marriage residency, 48 hours in the country and you're allowed to vote? And why is our country the only country on the planet that allows people that aren't citizens of our country to vote? Why is that? How is that possible? I don't know. It's frustrating. Anyway, we're going to take a short break. Representative Warren Davidson will be up after the break. Back in just a minute.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Censorship is a key issue here, particularly for people on the right. Do you think it was addressed adequately?
Definitely not. It was useful to name check Diamond and Silk. It was useful to check even politicians who had campaign ads that were shut down. But in every case, Zuckerberg was allowed to essentially dismiss the case and move on.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now is a gentleman that, one of many gentlemen over the last 18 months who I have gained more and more respect for. He is part of the Freedom Caucus, a group of people who are people who I think truly value conservative ways and ideals, and feels like our last line of defense. He's Representative Warren Davidson. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm good. I got to ask you, you're an Army guy. You attended the U.S. Military Academy. My father was a 101st Airborne, so I always want to give a shout out to the Army. So thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Also the 101st Airborne Rocket Science.
Yeah. Listen, I can't even imagine what life is like right now in D.C. and around the Beltway, given all of the hysteria that seems to be occurring daily. Every day it feels like we're dealing with the end of the world, the Chicken Little, according to liberals. Let me first just go ahead and ask you, I'm curious what your takeaway was of the Putin-Trump meeting as a thing, and then obviously the post-press conference and the president's remarks afterwards.
Well, I found a saying that I learned in one of my first Army units, very helpful, especially in the current context. We had a unit motto said, "Deeds, not words." And yes. When you judge this administration by the deeds, you can't be, help but be impressed. I mean, the results have been great. And I think the reality is, with respect to Putin, you look at the deeds. I mean, this administration has been very strong in the actions with Russia. We've implemented sanctions. We've increased spending in the European Defense Initiative, put pressure on NATO to increase spending, done things the Obama administration wouldn't do, like give arms to the Ukrainians. So, the deeds are strong. The words, definitely not the president's finest hour, but it's amazing how, the left just seizes on the openings to frankly divide our country and undermine this president.
That's exactly why I'm smiling right now, in the sense that after 18 months, my country is in a far better place, both domestically and abroad, than it was 18 months ago. And listen, he's not a politician. I don't expect him to be a good public speaker. I don't think he is. I think he says things, and I don't think he thinks things through sometimes, much like I tweet. I get it. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, the amount of things that he's done exactly what he promised he was going to do on the campaign trail. And that, that anybody would act surprised that he's doing these things is, especially at this point. At this point, if you go back and look at what he promised us, he's doing the things he said he would do, including getting a chance at a second Supreme Court justice, which is, God bless him, a blessing for us. I'm wondering if when you look at that meeting and you look at potential objectives, what is a win for you out of this?
Russia is now Russia. It used to be the Soviet Union, and when I was growing up, Reagan was president. I graduated high school, joined the Army, got over to Germany when the wall came down. It was a great time to be there, and literally met people their first hours of freedom. And, the Soviet Union went bankrupt. I mean, they didn't go Chapter 7, we're done, like Blockbuster did. They restructured. They spent the last generation trying to claw their way back on the world stage. And then this past week, there it was, President Putin, President Trump, and standing next to each other. So I think they've built their way up to where they are today. Previous administrations all through this time frame have worked to have a positive, constructive relationship with Russia. And Russia seems particularly resistant to that. Despite, W looking into his soul, despite Obama saying I'm going to have more flexibility after the next election, Trump's continued to try to extend every way possible for the Russians to engage with the West and not go down the path that bankrupted their country. They tried some things, whether it was fully sanctioned by the Russian government or not, in Syria recently and got spanked pretty badly. So my hope is that they can change course and work with the United States. They have worked constructively in Syria. One of the big boasts the president made was we're going to defeat ISIS. And the amount of progress, ISIS is nearly extinct, is amazing there. And when you look at the actions with respect to the rest of the U.S. relationship with Russia, the question is, can we get them to engage constructively with the world? That would mean that they don't, engage in influence operations in Western, European, governments or in our government. But, that's what they do. I mean, you could almost make a Geico commercial about it at this point. That's what Russia does.
Unfortunately, that's actually very true. Hey, I want to switch topics and go down to the border. I grew up in Arizona, so I'm intimately familiar with illegal immigration issues and the things that it's always been a battle being fought down in Arizona. It appears to me that the left has us playing their game right now. I have a couple different guests that are on weekly, and we talk about the fact that as conservatives, we're very reactive when it comes to news and politics. We're allowing them to kind of lead the conversation. And for example, 10 days ago, every minute of every second of every news show was about the children being separated from their families at the borders, even though they were showing and telling a lie as a narrative. And I'm wondering how you guys manage, both as the Freedom Caucus and just generally as Republicans, how do you deal day to day with a media that is trying to A, ambush you, and B, trying to find a way to say something that you've said and spin it into something that works for them? I mean, that just, first of all, it can't be enjoyable. But secondly, it feels to me like every discussion with someone in the media is a potential landmine waiting to happen.
I've definitely tried to work on that myself. I mean, I was a business guy 2.5 years ago, and, John Boehner was my member of Congress. And then he resigned. I wasn't planning to run, and there I go. I find myself with this opportunity to run, and it worked. So I've worked on that because that's the new trade. So you've got to improve it. But yeah, I mean, in that sense, I think everyone can relate to President Trump. It's a really big transition. It's a really big gotcha. And I watch some of the highlights of Sarah Sanders and see how she managed it, because they're hitting her every day with how to trip up on words. And I think it's very helpful in general, as I say, deeds, not words. Look at what are we getting done. I think it's really hard for people to say they're not better off now than they were 2 years ago. You go back the summer of 2016, the summer of 2015, and you look at where we're at as a country together. We've gotten there. The president laid out a bold agenda. Congress has implemented it. You talk about the regulatory effect, and I think it's underappreciated, but he said we were going to get rid of 2 regulations for every new one. And I think the cynics thought, oh, yeah, we'll just launch one big one. But the reality is, with the Congressional Review Act, with things that have not just been executive actions, but have moved through the legislature the way it's supposed to be, not by cell phone and pen, but been fully implemented. I mean, we've eliminated 22, 23 regulations for every new one that's been launched. This is one of the biggest things that is driving the growth in the economy and just making people feel more free.
Well, and you're right. People that sit here today and complain about the president are almost to a person better off financially, better off from a security perspective. And the level of – and here's I guess the easiest way to put it is our president's a pragmatist, not a politician. He as a businessman, and as a person in the private sector, it's about being surrounded by the right people and making sure that every decision in my opinion, every decision you make is to the betterment of the people that trust you. And I don't have a problem with the things he's done. I don't really have a problem with things he said. I wish he would have said them differently, but that's because it makes what I do harder, trying to get him out of those the situations. But I get what he's doing. I get what he means. And again, he promised me the things that he's done, and he's done them. And when you look at the wall and the fact that there's it's now starting to move from a financial perspective, I'm even more excited, especially when you think about the immigration problem. The last question I want to ask you, I sat in amazement watching Peter Strzok testify last week. I was amazed because I saw a man who clearly felt like when he sat down, didn't matter, nothing, no one could touch him. He was answering things, and I think his response was incredibly aggressive. And I'm wondering, as someone, how much power do those committees have to hold somebody accountable, if anything? I want to see stuff happen. I want to see people held accountable. I want to see people go to jail. It doesn't feel like we're going to see any of that happening, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things. Congress is weak because Congress, the members of Congress has allowed Congress to be weak. You look at the previous administration, the previous two attorneys general, frankly, Eric Holder was held in contempt. Loretta Lynch probably should have been. You look at the previous administration where subpoenas were ignored, false testimony was given, and evidence under subpoena was destroyed or lost. Those are things that people go to jail for. We wouldn't even agree to impeach people over that. And impeachment's not like you're going down to Gitmo or even jail. It just means you lose your job. You get fired. So I do agree that there should be a crime related to impeachment. But you look at the precedent in Congress. And recently I mentioned that at least former Speaker Nancy Pelosi was at least consistent in that she seems to be fine with evidence being destroyed or withheld from the legislative branch because she's supporting the people that are trying to prevent Congress from doing our job. And we're a co-equal branch. And I just think it goes back to the very moment that the founders walked out of the Constitutional Convention. And, famously, Ben Franklin's asked, what have you wrought, sir? What did you guys just do? We created a republic, if you can keep it. And the question is, can we keep it? And we can't keep it by having a weak and neutered Congress. Congress has got to step up, demand the respect that it is due as an equal branch, and they have to hold people accountable. And I think that's really what's at stake here with evidence that's being redacted. And what you find out when some of it is finally been divulged is they're not doing it to protect sources and methods. They're doing it because it's embarrassing for the officials that were leading the FBI. And, field agents, the rank and file members are being embarrassed by their former leadership. These are all mostly political appointees, but things have gone wrong. You look at Comey, Brennan, and Clapper. Who would have thought that you would have a former director of the FBI, former director of the CIA, former director of national intelligence engaging in commentary as bitter partisans trying to undermine a sitting president? It's unbelievable.
You said a word that I'm in tune with that, so I lied. I want to ask you one more question. The word accountability. What is your response to a constituent of yours that comes up and says, why do you guys get to play by different, and by you guys I mean our government, why are you allowed to play by different rules than us? Why are you not legally accountable like your citizens are? I mean, and I kind of know where you're going to go with the answer, but why aren't you more upset about it and doing something to make it change?
Yeah, this is the fight that's going on in Congress right now. I mean, this is what's got, frankly, Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan pushing to impeach Rosenstein because it's taken this amount of pressure to push our House leadership to take the actions that we've taken to push for full compliance, not partial compliance, full compliance with the orders that have been given under subpoena. And so that's the question. And really, when you look at what's the path ahead for the House, are we going to stay in the broken status quo on our interaction with the executive branch, or are we going to restore justice to the Justice Department? I mean, when people were chanting "lock her up" about Hillary Clinton, it wasn't just because they didn't like Hillary Clinton. It was exactly what you're talking about. People know that she's done things that are wrong. If you can't say it's Hillary Clinton, somebody gave the order to smash BlackBerries that were under subpoena. somebody, used bleach bit for a reason. So what I mean, this has to be part of a functioning republic. There has to be separation of powers, and there has to be accountability restored, or we will not see justice restored to our Justice Department, or really functioning correctly in our country.
Over the last 18 months, the only people I see truly standing up for what they've always stood up for is the Freedom Caucus, and I think that is not a small point, given where we're headed over the next couple of months to next couple, another 6 years. So it's really nice to get a chance to catch up with you. I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, thanks, Curt. Great talking with you as always.
God bless you. Take care of yourself, sir. Representative Warren Davidson.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
I said that it's the epitome of hypocrisy. Unless you fall in line with their liberal agenda, this uniparty, globalist, liberal agenda, they will never support you. They use the whole gender issue, of course, as some kind of tool to prop up their messaging, but it's the phoniest thing.
Sirius XM Patriot, Channel 125. We want to hear from you. Tweet the show at Garrick38. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Go to Breitbart and up in the search, put John Nolte's name, and you're going to find some really good articles. Hey, John, how are you, buddy?
Hey, good morning, Curt. Happy Friday.
I don't even know how to say this and not be uncomfortable. USA Today columnist Sherry Jacobus, she launched into a couple of Twitter attacks against a campaign, Michael Caputo, a Trump campaign staffer. I'll let you tell the story because it's very uncomfortable to even talk about.
Seemingly out of the blue, this USA Today columnist attacked Caputo. He had snarked at some Politico writer, and then she just comes screaming out of the dark like Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction, attacking this guy and attacking his children. Apparently he has a couple young daughters.
Right.
And she accused him of whoring them out. She asked if they were as ugly as he was. And then she said,
ugly like you?
Are you going to give them to Trump to take to Jeffrey Epstein's island? And Jeffrey Epstein is the financier who pled guilty to soliciting underage prostitutes. So she's bringing child rape into it. I mean, just some of the nastiest, most unhinged stuff you could imagine. And this is what we're seeing from the media. This is what we're seeing from the establishment. This level of hatred and just evil. It's just evil what she said. And, as of now, and I'm not calling for anyone to get fired. I don't do that. But as of now, she still has a job.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we all know that if she had gone after if she were a Republican who had attacked a Democrat in some way.
If this tweet said, at Barack Obama, are your daughters ugly like you? The last one, your illegitimate daughter contemplating the pavement because her loser dad is a traitor? Keep it up. #bad. Basically, he's saying, is your daughter going to commit suicide? Someone suggesting she went too far. She actually defended herself, saying, then ask him why he drags his daughters into the public stage and uses them to help him beg for money so he can afford his vacation home. He's whoring out his own daughters. Can you imagine anyone anywhere, much less a woman, saying that about the Obama daughters? Which were off limits, apparently.
And my favorite example is always going to be the week-long jihad the media went after a rodeo clown, a nobody rodeo clown because he wore an Obama mask, or the nobody congressional staffer who earned a dozen Washington Post attacks because she complained about the Obama daughter's behavior at the annual turkey pardon. So, I mean, these are nobodies that are picked up by our media and vilified, nationally vilified, destroyed as villains, even though they are nobodies. And here is a columnist for a national newspaper who is tweeting the most vile stuff you can imagine and nothing. And I think it just tells you everything you need to know about how depraved and degraded and corrupt our media is.
I want to ask you this next one. If an art gallery had a picture of President Obama being lynched or having his throat slit, it would have gone far beyond, hey, take that sign down. The left would have wanted legal repercussions for the owner of that art gallery. Portland, Oregon, which, by the way, I had no idea Portland, Oregon was a cesspool of liberalism as it is. An art gallery had a picture of the president having his throat slit, is being pulled back. There's blood coming from his nose, and there's a knife actually slicing his throat. And the caption is titled "F Trump." The sign was taken down, or the picture was taken down. But the fact that, and here's the thing, you and I are the same way. I don't want people fired. I don't care. I just want the same standard in the media for them as there is for everyone else. And that is so far from what's happening. And the bias is just ridiculous. I mean, I remember hearing it saying, no publicity is bad publicity. That's not true. That's never been true, because there are certain things you can do and say. You think the Red Hen got good publicity? I mean, was that good publicity for anybody? Their business isn't going through the roof. What's happening to it is exactly what should be happening to it. But the fact that the Secret Service isn't swarming all over this guy and his art gallery is just stunning to me.
And I agree. My only problem, I draw a line with the president. I think that when you, and I don't care who it is, I think that when you depict a picture of a beheading of the president, that we do need to draw a line somewhere. And I'm a free speech extremist. And then to take this picture and put it on the window, the outside window of the art gallery, and you could see from the picture that it's a street. So anybody passing by is not only going to see that picture, but they're going to see the F word. And it is just, now I don't think that they should be swarmed by the Secret Service. I agree with you. I don't think they should be put out of business. I don't believe in boycotts. But listen, a public shaming to take that down, that's pretty American to me.
Yeah.
And
well,
John, but again, you have to
John,
imagine.
You know as well as I do, if that art gallery owner was in the Middle East, they would be publicly executed. If that person was in Russia, they would be in jail for life. I mean, our First Amendment pretty much allows you to say anything you want as long as you don't cause harm, physical harm to someone, or threaten somebody's life committing the crime. The First Amendment's the First Amendment. Again, I guess what I'm asking is why is the left allowed to act irrational and we never do? And I say that in all honesty. I don't like it. I didn't like the Red Hen. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to look at the sign. I'm not going to. I mean, capitalism is a beautiful thing. Free markets tend to self-correct. I don't need the government to tell me not to bake a cake. The fact of the matter is, if I know that there's a racist group of people that own a business, I won't cuss. I won't frequent the business. If I know people are Trump-hating, liberals, I'm not going to frequent the business. I mean, that's how it's supposed to resolve itself. And now we've gotten to a point where for 8 years it was hands off the Obama family. They were some sacred cow. But Trump's family is, the things that have been said about the Trump family from Barron to on up is beyond repulsive. Yet you and I aren't calling for government intervention.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't think people should lose their job over speech. I don't think they should lose their job over art. But it is the double standard that is galling. And the reason that there's the double standard is because the media is the propaganda arm of the left. And if you wear a mask that mocks Barack Obama, you are going to be personally and professionally destroyed. If you put a picture of the beheading of Trump, they're going to ignore you. They're going to protect you by ignoring you. And imagine if a Republican had shot up a Democrat baseball field full of Democrat congressmen. I mean, because the reverse happened, it was a 2-day story.
Yep.
Even though the guy was a Bernie bro. And had the opposite happened, had it been Democrats getting shot at by some wild-eyed Republican, that story would have lasted 2 weeks.
It would have been what they always do. That would have been the representative of the conservative group members. That's who the conservatives are. when in fact we know that's exactly who liberals are and what they want. The amount of effort they're putting into wanting this administration to fail is beyond comprehension right now. I mean, they are. It's literally as if they're rooting for a war with Russia, and I just don't get it. Hey, before we go, I want to get on another topic. I think the guy is a complete idiot. I've always thought he was kind of a dirtbag. Sacha Baron Cohen's Who is America, which, by the way, tanked awesomely on Showtime Sunday night, attracting only 327,000 viewers, which landed it in 70th place for the day, which is awesome, by the way. The only thing he's ever done that was even remotely watchable was play Jean Girard. But I would like for you to explain to people. You know what stolen valor is. It's when someone emulates a member of the military to gain benefit or to gain, recognition. This gentleman, gentleman is a challenging word. He dressed up or presented himself as a wounded warrior to get an interview he would not have gotten with Sarah Palin. And I commented on Twitter, and he commented back. I said, listen, what a scumbag that did this. And I was told, well, I'm an idiot because you can't commit stolen valor if you're not an American citizen, which is bullshit. But this guy, the reviews and the ratings from what I've heard from you and other people, is the movie's an absolute disaster.
I remember back in 2006, and I was the lone voice that saw the movie Borat, which was a huge hit. And he ran around pretending to be this guy from Kazakhstan or something. And I watched conservatives like Jonah Goldberg and there were people I respected who loved the movie. They thought it was hilarious. And I remember I was the only guy sitting there going, wait a minute. When did it become okay for comedians, wealthy comedians backed by multinational corporations, to target everyday Americans, powerless Americans? When did that become? I didn't find anything funny about. I mean, it was clever, and obviously the man is talented, but all I saw was a guy manipulating, getting the last word through his editing, and pushing everyday decent Americans into behaving poorly through manipulation. And I don't think that's funny. I think it's cruel. You don't do that. Comedy's supposed to target the powerful. And now I see 12 years later that, and I'm not trying to brag, but it just feels like everybody caught up to me because he's doing this again because he hasn't had a hit since 2006, since Borat.
Right.
And now people are starting to figure out this is not okay. It's not okay to do this. Why? He's backed by Viacom, which owns Showtime, multinational, multi-billion-dollar company, and he's picking on everyday people. And he's editing them to make them look ridiculous. And the worst thing is that this is not Jay Leno going on the street, identifying himself clearly to people,
right,
and in a good-natured way joking because they don't know who the vice president is. This is something where he's trying to destroy these people instead of sort of mocking the fact that they don't know what's going on in America, but as attacking them as racists and all this. It's just vile behavior.
Right.
And I'm very glad that it's flopping because we can't encourage this stuff.
Well,
we just can't encourage.
Speaking of flopping, probably the most vocal, hateful anti-Trumper out there. Although when he was called on it by Sean Hannity, he curled up in a fetal position. Rob Reiner just put out a movie called Shock and Awe, and as you can imagine, it's his continued attempt to destroy President George W. Bush, which has never been a movie that takes off for anybody. But Shock and Awe came out, and do I have this number right? The movie averaged $410 per screen.
And remember, when they say per screen, that's not per screening.
Right.
That is per theater. So if there were 5 showings, they sold about $80 in tickets. That's how bad that movie did, with some pretty big stars, a couple of Academy Award nominees like
right.
Woody Harrelson. And this is the 6th flop. I mean, and Rob Reiner is not just making movies that don't do well or underperform.
Right.
He has directed 6 mega humiliating flops over the last 12 years. He hasn't had a hit since the mid 2000s. And this is a guy that directed Spinal Tap, who directed Stand By Me and Misery. And then it's like during the Bush years, he just lost his mind and he lost his talent and he lost his mojo, because The Princess Bride, these are great movies. The American President. And now he can't seem to get off the floor. He's so wrapped up in his politics.
His movie making has gotten personal, and it shows.
And I have news. Sherry Jacobus has been fired by USA Today. I just came across.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for them. Good for them.
Yep.
Good for them. Honestly, and I'm not being sarcastic, good. That's what they should have done. And that's how it's supposed to work. So, that's good. They fired her.
Joking about child rape.
Right.
It's just not okay.
Well, it's so far beyond not okay, I don't even know what to say. Hey, listen, it's great to catch up with you. I'd love to catch up with you again next week.
Yeah, no, anytime. I'm happy to come on anytime, Curt. Thank you so much.
All right, buddy. Thanks, John. John Nolte from Breitbart.com. And again, guys, I'm telling you right now, go to Breitbart.com and put his name in the search and look at his stuff, read his stuff. His stuff is amazing. I'm going to skip winners and losers today. I want to quickly give you guys an experience I had. A friend of ours who has 3 boys, and his boys were all right around the ages of my boys as well. About 5 days ago, their 20-year-old son was killed in a motorcycle accident. And yesterday, we went to the wake, and my youngest son went with us. And first of all, I don't know how you go on after something like that. I saw a 20-year-old boy who was gone, and the father, who I have known for a while, and the 2 boys were there, and they were accepting, condolences and stuff. But I kept waiting and looking at this boy, waiting for him to breathe. He was so at peace. It was just, I don't know how you do it as a parent, but I just wanted to take a second to say to those of you with kids, a little extra hug today. No one ever leaves the house thinking it's going to be forever. No one ever says goodbye thinking it's going to be for the last time. And don't, that whole saying, don't go to bed angry. You don't want the last thing you say to your kids to be something you'll regret the rest of your life. And I none of that happened here, but it just made me think. And I don't need to see something like this to appreciate life. I appreciate life, but seeing this really hits your gut as a parent. And the thought of putting one of your children into the ground, I don't know how you get through it. But, I just want to say thoughts and prayers to this family and to the brothers who I spoke briefly with. And, the only message I could give them was, grieve all you want to, cry all you want to. And when you're done, you got to get up and you got to make sure that people remember your brother for the rest of your lives. That's all I could come up with. Anyway, just want to say take time out to throw a hug, an extra hug or 2 in there. All right. God bless you guys. Thank you for tuning in. I'll catch up. Have a great weekend, a safe weekend, and I will catch up with you guys on Monday next week. Take care, guys.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson.
I want to actually take a couple of the references to Donald Trump from hip-hop. And then we're going to try to see if we can figure out why they like Donald Trump. Jay-Z said, I'm at the Trump International. Ask for me. Raekwon said, I'm the black Trump. They are comparing themselves to what he represents. His wealth, his achievement. Capitalism.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.